There are over 700,000 sexual offenders in the United States alone. With all the social media these days, how can we protect ourselves and our children from these despicable predators?
Welcome to the Voice of the Victim podcast, where we discuss criminal cases that involve some factor of abuse. Our goal is to spread awareness of abuse that could be taking place around any of us and encourage everyone to take responsibility and report if they see a child or an adult being abused. It was June 14th, 2015 in Springfield, Missouri. Police received a call from a person that was concerned about their neighbors, Didi and Gypsy Blancharde, after seeing some alarming posts on their Facebook page. Didi had spent the past 2 decades caring for her daughter, who was overrun with many different illnesses from sleep apnea, epilepsy, asthma, muscular dystrophy, and cancer. She was confined to a wheelchair and had to eat through a feeding tube. Didi was the picture-perfect image of a selfless, caring mother. The police arrived at the Blancharde's house in Springfield to do a welfare check. The one and only car was at the house, but no one was answering the door. Not having a warrant, concerned police asked one of the many neighbors that had gathered around the house to enter through a window and check it out. The neighbor walked through the house but came out the door and said they couldn't find anyone. After obtaining a warrant, the police broke into the house and found a grisly scene. Didi was in the house, on her bed, laying on her stomach in a pool of blood. Her back was riddled with stab wounds. She was dead, and her disabled daughter, Gypsy, was nowhere to be found. Dun dun.
Dun 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 dun. Wow.
Alright, so this is a pretty intense case with a lot of stuff to cover, isn't it?
This case is so strange and bizarre.
So let's talk about Didi's past, the victim of this murder. Didi Blancharde was born on May 3rd in 1967 with the name Claudine Petrie in Check Bay, Louisiana, near the Gulf Coast, and she became a nurse's aide later in life. But during her childhood, her family recalled that she would sometimes steal things when things didn't go her way as a retaliation. Then when she was 24, she got pregnant by a 17-year-old kid, Rod Blancharde. When they found out she was pregnant, they got married, and they named her Gypsy Rose because Claudine liked the name Gypsy and Rod was a Guns N' Roses fan. Just before Gypsy was born, they separated because Rod felt that they got married for the wrong reasons, so Didi moved in with her parents. Gypsy Rose was born healthy, but may have been slightly premature according to the family. But around 3 months old, her mother took her to the hospital convinced she had sleep apnea. So around age 8, her grandfather took her on a motorcycle ride and they got into an accident. And Gypsy injured her knee, apparently so severely that her mother, a nurse's assistant, said it would require several surgeries to treat her properly. And so from that point on, Gypsy was confined to a wheelchair. From then on, Gypsy was often part of Special Olympic events. In 2001, Gypsy was named the honorary queen of Crew of Mid-City Parade, basically the children's parade during the Mardi Gras in New Orleans. Gypsy's illnesses became so severe that she needed to be homeschooled, and she later learned to read with the Harry Potter books. They eventually moved out of Didi's parents' house and settled in Slidell in public housing. They got public assistance for the bills from grants due to Gypsy's medical conditions. Rod, Gypsy's father, was also paying child support, $1,200 a month. But Didi had let Gypsy know that he was horribly abusive and a drunk and wasn't safe to see him.
They were constantly in and out of the hospital with different conditions that Gypsy suffered from. Gypsy began having hearing and vision problems, muscular dystrophy, and epilepsy. Gypsy underwent several surgeries and trips to the ER, and she was also battling leukemia. In 2001, she had to start using an eating tube, which had to be changed every 6 months, by the way. It hurt.
They insert it in your throat.
She said that they don't use any type of numbing or they don't put them under, so they just rip it out and put a new one in. and it was every 6 months. It was super painful.
Ouch.
In 2005, Hurricane Katrina ripped through the area and their apartment was ruined. Gypsy's medical records and birth certificate were all destroyed in this catastrophe. They moved to Missouri shortly afterwards, and they lived in a rented home in Aurora.
And while they lived there, Gypsy was honored as Child of the Year 2007 by the Olay Foundation, which advocates for the rights of feeding tube recipients. And the next year, in 2008, Habitat for Humanity built them a handy, accessible home with a wheelchair ramp, lower light switches, and a hot tub.
Something that's funny or interesting about their house is that it was on Hope and Volunteer Way.
So as a single mother with a severely disabled daughter that were forced to flee their home after Katrina destroyed it, Didi and Gypsy received a lot of local media attention. The community would donate money to help support them, and they also received many charitable contributions. They were able to stay at the Ronald McDonald House while in the area for medical appointments. They received free flights to see doctors in Kansas City, and at one point Gypsy had saved up her allowance for a long time for a trip to Disney World, but instead of that she used it to buy food and blankets for the homeless. Because of this, Gypsy was given a free trip to Disney World by the Children's Wish Foundation, which helps kids with terminal medical conditions. Gypsy was a perfect candidate for this because she was confined to a wheelchair and battling leukemia. Through the Make-A-Wish Foundation, she got backstage passage to Miranda Lambert, where she was photographed with the singer.
Miranda Lambert also gave her a check for $3,500.
Oh, really? Huh. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
So, Gypsy, she was a small girl, only 5 feet tall. She was missing most of her teeth because of medication she was on, and all of her hair. She often wore wigs, and she had a childlike soft voice because she was so frail. After her mother was found dead and Gypsy was missing, they saw that all of Gypsy's life support equipment was still at the house. So wherever Gypsy was, she must have been suffering. So, do you want to talk about the new piece of evidence that came up in the case?
What was the new piece of evidence?
The Facebook posts.
Oh. Didn't know where you were going with that. So Didi and Gypsy shared a Facebook page where they kept their supporters updated with their new and upcoming medical procedures and what they were going to be doing. But there were a few alarming posts to the page. This part of the show, listener discretion is advised. The first post said, "The bee is dead," and as friends began to comment on it confused, the account commented, "I effing slashed that fat pig and raped her sweet, innocent daughter. Her scream was so effing loud, LOL."
I'm so glad you read that part.
Why?
Because I didn't want to. So, police suspected their account had been hacked, and whoever hacked it may have Gypsy. They traced the IP address that the post had come from, and it traced to a house all the way up in Big Bend, Wisconsin, from the Godejohn household. So the next day, the Waukesha County Police raided the home, and they found Nicholas Godejohn and Gypsy, who appeared to be unharmed. They were both taken back to Missouri for questioning. During the questioning, Godejohn fully admitted to the murder of D.G. Blancharde, but the other part of his confession was the shocking part.
Gypsy had asked him to do it. Why would Gypsy ask Nicholas to kill her mother, her primary caretaker, the woman that had dedicated her life to caring for Gypsy with all of her terrible medical issues? The sheriff at the press conference that was talking about what they had learned said this: "Things are not always as they appear." And we'll see soon how true that statement was.
Nicholas Godejohn was Gypsy's secret boyfriend who she had met on Facebook. And according to Gypsy, the only way they could be together was if Didi was dead. So let's talk about this murder. Godejohn, Nicholas, Gypsy's boyfriend, came to Springfield in June 2015 while Didi and Gypsy were away at a doctor's appointment. When they returned home, Didi went to sleep. The Gypsy let Godejohn know, and he entered the house. Gypsy gave him duct tape, gloves, and a knife to murder her own mother. He told Gypsy to hide in the bathroom and cover her ears. Then he entered Didi's room. She was laying on her stomach sleeping, and he stabbed her several times in the back. She woke up alarmed and screamed out for Gypsy, but it was no use. Then he told Gypsy it was done, and they had sex in Gypsy's room. After they took $4,000 of cash that had come from child support checks and went to a hotel outside of Springfield.
Sounds pretty harsh.
Springfield.
They mailed the knife back to Godejohn's home in Wisconsin to avoid being caught with it. Then they took the Greyhound bus back to his home. Gypsy asked Godejohn to make the Facebook post to make sure they found her body. While at the bus station, people recognized Gypsy, and they reported that she was wearing a blonde wig. The strange part was that she was walking around unassisted.
Well, this was the epitome of a premeditated and violent murder. So why on earth would this girl pretend to be a paraplegic and sick and then ask her boyfriend to kill her mother just so they could be together?
Let's rewind and go back to Didi.
This section is called Didi is Evil. Didi may not have been as sweet and innocent as she appeared. According to family members, Didi had taken out credit cards in their names. She had also been in legal trouble for writing bad checks.
It got so bad that apparently she racked up enough debt to be on America's Most Wanted list.
Wow. That's right in the documentary, Mommy, Dead and Dearest, which we highly recommend. You can see Didi's mugshot from when she was arrested for
her mugshot?
Her mugshot. Is that what I said?
Yeah.
My bad. Here's another thing. Didi's mother had died a while ago, and it was seemingly for no reason while she was under Didi's care, but her family suspected that Didi may have been responsible because she had been starving her. We mentioned that Gypsy suffered from several medical conditions, but according to the doctors, they were never officially diagnosed.
As a nurse's aide, Didi knew a lot of medical terminology and a lot of conditions that couldn't really be diagnosed. So Didi first took Gypsy in, insisting that she had sleep apnea. And although the test showed no sign of the condition, they listened to the mother.
Yeah, and remember that motorcycle accident that caused injuries requiring surgery? According to Didi, well, in reality, it was nothing more than a scraped knee. But Didi decided Gypsy needed to be confined to a wheelchair after that.
She pretty much self-diagnosed Gypsy with being paralyzed from the waist down after that.
Yeah, crazy. So she confined her daughter to a wheelchair for no reason. After Gypsy was born and they had lived with Didi's father and stepmother, Didi was preparing a lot of the food for the family. And they claimed that Didi had been poisoning the stepmother's food with a weed killer, and she became chronically ill, so much so that she had been bedridden for 9 months. And they confronted her about this, and quickly after that, she left their house. And once Didi moved out, the illnesses stopped. So there's no denying that. That's directly from her father and stepmother. Didi claimed that Gypsy had muscular dystrophy also, but there was a medical record of a muscle biopsy that found no sign of this muscular dystrophy. Didi claimed that Gypsy had seizures every few months, and they had prescribed her anti-seizure medication, which caused Gypsy's teeth to fall out.
So, really quick, can we go over the list of what she claimed Gypsy had?
Yeah, why don't you go?
Didi said that Gypsy had leukemia, asthma, vision and hearing impairments, muscular dystrophy, seizures, meaning epilepsy. She was paralyzed from the waist down, and she had retardation. So all of those wrapped up with a pretty bow, and you've got the perfect daughter to get you exactly what you want.
Yeah, we haven't talked about, and I don't think I have it in the notes, but they received a lot of donations and support from people. Basically a giant scam, as we're learning now.
Didi would look up foundations that she knew she could use to get help from, lots of money and free trips like the Make-A-Wish Foundation. She left an extensive paper bread trail, that included a fake birth certificate. Everything was right on the birth certificate except for the date, which was 1991, then changed to 1993, and then she changed the 3 to a 5, making it 1995. So she wanted to keep Gypsy young and keep making her younger.
Yeah, at the time of the murder, everyone thought she was only 19, but she was actually 23. It was also common for Didi to take Gypsy to the ER for the most minor ailments, like a cough or something like that. And family claimed that Gypsy walked normally and ran and played with the other kids all the time when Didi wasn't around, but then Didi would see her and scold her.
Gypsy had to go through a lot of medical procedures too. It included eye surgeries, removal of her salivatory glands, gastrointestinal and intestinal surgeries, and the changing of her feeding tube, which was every 6 months.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
She had over 150 doctors, and when they went to these doctors, Didi told Gypsy not to talk while they were at the doctor. Instead, Didi was supposed to look and play with a stuffed animal or a Barbie that Didi would grab for her along the way. She had to go through brain scans, muscle scans, CAT scans, and many, many, many medications.
Ugh. Yeah, just the side effects alone would make anyone sick. But you mentioned that she had her salivatory glands removed. Gypsy said that Didi actually put this numbing ointment in Gypsy's mouth when she went to get that, saying she was drooling too much. Oh. So she actually was causing the problems intentionally to make the doctors take out her salivary glands, which that sounds like it would make eating really difficult if you weren't producing saliva to help you digest. So
wouldn't need it.
Thanks a lot, Mom. Yeah, exactly. So that ruins her experience of eating for life.
Didi used her southern charm, is what Gypsy said, to get what she wanted. It was really she had a really good excuse to claim where all her records had gone. She would always say that they were destroyed in Katrina. So
yeah, and while simultaneously looking for pity. But another thing is that Didi regularly shaved Gypsy's head to mimic the hairless appearance of a chemotherapy patient. When they left the house, Didi would often take an oxygen tank and feeding tube with them, and Gypsy was fed liquid nutrition supplement for children well into her 20s, so malnourished. But can you imagine a mother shaving their kid's head for a fake cancer, saying that it's going to fall out anyway because of your chemotherapy?
Yeah, it's really sad because Gypsy genuinely believed all these things were wrong with her, except for the fact that she could walk, but she just relied on Mother Knows Best for that.
And you mentioned that she had used physical abuse to control her daughter, and that when she was at the doctor's or in the presence of others, she would always hold Gypsy's hand. And whenever Gypsy would say something that suggested she wasn't really sick or that she wasn't retarded, Gypsy said that her mother would give her a really tight hand squeeze. And once they were alone, Didi would strike her open hands or hit her with a coat hanger. Didi would make her hold her hands out, and depending on how severe what she did, would determine how many times she would slap Gypsy on the hands. Yeah. So what really hit me hard was in that documentary, Mommy, Dead and Dearest, which I highly recommend, because you can see Didi's own parents and nephew talking about her. And their response to her death, when they were trying to figure out what to do with the cremated remains, no one wanted her. So they said, flush it down the toilet.
And when they asked her father, her biological father, what she was like as a child, his response was, she's okay. So not very warm and fuzzy. Her stepmother called her very selfish, that she pretty much got exactly what she wanted when she wanted it.
There were also times when other people had noticed that this whole thing was a sham, but there wasn't much they could do. There was a doctor that noticed Gypsy, who had claimed to have muscular dystrophy. Her leg muscles had a normal tone for someone who couldn't walk, so it was strange to him, and he reported that in his notes. But the system isn't set up to protect over-treated children. It's only set up to protect neglected children. So even though he put that in his notes, no one did anything about it. And when her family first heard about her being dead, they thought it was another one of her tricks. And her nephew wondered, who did she piss off now? Her parents said flat out that she got what she deserved. So she didn't have a great reputation with the people that knew her best.
Right. Her character was very poor.
Yeah. There was also a time that the police had been called out to the house because an anonymous caller claimed that Didi was scamming people with this whole thing, and they showed up to the house, but then Didi showed them some papers and kind of shooed them away, and they left. So Gypsy had seen the police at her house, and that they didn't do anything to help her, so her situation seemed more and more hopeless in her eyes. So Gypsy ended up... she could have been charged with the death penalty in Missouri because they still have capital punishment at that time, and but due to the mitigating factors that we discussed, the abuse, the sympathy for Didi as a murder victim shifted to Gypsy as a victim of long-term child abuse. And while in jail awaiting the trial, Gypsy had gained 14 pounds, even though most people lose weight in this situation, because she was so malnourished from eating baby food her whole life. And you can see in her interviews now that she's so much healthier than she was when she lived with her mother. But she didn't take the trial. She took a plea bargain and got sentenced to 10 years in prison, which she needs to serve 85% before being eligible for parole. Did you want to say something?
Just that she could get out by 2024.
Yeah, 2024. So she's going to be in her 30s when she finally gets out. Personally, and I know this is probably not justice, but in my mind, she's already done 23 years in prison by the time she committed the murder, because her whole life was in captivity of her mother and lying about her age and getting legal custody of her even after she turned an adult.
Yeah, I would agree with you. She does seem happy in prison, though. She said to the journalist that she finally knows what living is like. And this is the most free she's ever been. So
yeah.
It's almost like a vacation.
Yeah, and in our society, that's technically the least freedom and the worst place you can be. So it really shows the level of abuse there.
Yeah, she said she feels free, she has friends, she can walk, and she can finally eat. So she feels like she has a normal life now. Good.
I really hope that a lot of her prison stay, she's getting therapy, teaching her how to live in the real world. And I think it's interesting, just to reference the Generation Y podcast, Justin, when they covered this case, which was before Mommy, Dad, and Dearest came out, Justin had said if they would have gone to trial with the death penalty on the table, no jury would have found this girl guilty and she would have walked, which I completely agree with. But
yeah,
it might actually be good for her to be in prison right now if they are doing their best to rehabilitate her.
Yeah, she might get her GED.
Yeah. Which would be really helpful once she gets out. So
I don't know if she actually got her diploma or not. You might not want to put that in there.
But I just want to go over a couple of things that Gypsy struggled with before the murder that might have driven her to it. First, she was so over-medicated on drugs to treat her fake sicknesses that there's no end to the horrible side effects and actual health issues that these unnecessary drugs were causing. Gypsy said in her interview that while she was on Xanax, which is an anxiety medication her mom made her take, she felt no emotion. And this may have been a factor in her decision to resort to murder. And there was an event when Gypsy realized she was officially an adult, but others still thought she was a minor. And she had showed up at a neighbor's house to ask for a ride to the local hospital because she wanted to meet a man that she met online that she was romantically interested in. But the neighbors thought she was still a minor, and the man was assaulted by a group of people that knew Gypsy's medical conditions and accused the man of taking advantage of a mentally disabled and underage girl. So, really unfair to Gypsy to not be able to have a normal life of an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And Gypsy showed her real birth certificate to the people at the hospital after this incident, but then Didi showed up saying that that was a false birth certificate and showed them one with a more recent date of birth, saying that the one that said she was an adult was incorrect because it was issued after her real one was lost in Katrina, and basically it was the other way around, which is really sad.
Also, their home life. Their home life was so dysfunctional. The house was very cluttered. It was said that Didi was a hoarder, but the only thing that was very organized was a closet that she kept locked. When the police were able to get the door open on the closet, it was completely and fully stocked with medications of all sorts. They even had really strange writings on them, so it was easier for Didi to find the right ones that she was looking for. One said, "shaky baby." Really strange labeling, just like that,
What?
all over them.
Holy crap.
It was just like a pharmacy. So clearly there's something mentally wrong with Didi.
It was a pharmacy, except instead of saying what it can treat, it's saying what side effects will cause. Is that pretty much it?
I think so.
Oh my goodness. That's terrible. So before Gypsy had met Nick Godejohn, she had attended this fantasy convention in a costume because she felt she could blend in even in her wheelchair. And her mom was with her, but Gypsy actually escaped the convention and met up with a man in a hotel room that she had met online.
Who claimed that he just wanted to be friends. It was just like a friendly thing.
Yeah, and which is completely normal. But Didi showed up to the hotel room with paperwork showing Gypsy's false younger birth date and threatened to call the police. And after that event, they came home. Didi smashed Gypsy's computer with a hammer and threatened to do the same to her fingers if she ever tried to escape again. Keep in mind, she was a legal adult at this time and had every right to leave her mom's house. But she handcuffed Gypsy and leashed her to a bed for 2 weeks after that. Then she convinced Gypsy that if she went to the police for help, they wouldn't believe her because Didi had apparently filed paperwork to the police claiming Gypsy was mentally incompetent and needed to remain in her mother's custody. So her years as a legal adult were really exceptionally rough.
A little sheltered, you could say.
Yeah. So, do you have anything else to say before we talk about Nick, her boyfriend?
Just that although all these things are most likely the truth, we have to keep in mind that these are all being said by Gypsy and there's really no hardcore facts to back them up. But I don't know why she would make them up. Yeah,
and I think based on the evidence they found of the pills you were just talking about and the family's feelings about Didi, her own parents not caring if they flush her remains down the toilet, I mean, I'm inclined to believe Gypsy.
Gypsy also said that after her runaway attempt, Not only was she chained to the bed and all that, but Didi put bells on the doors so she could hear if Gypsy ever tried to get out of her room.
Wow. She's not a control freak at all. Okay, so Nick Godejohn, Gypsy's boyfriend, who committed the murder physically, his trial's set for later this year, 2018, but apparently he's got some kind of schizophrenia or something because Gypsy had talked about how he had multiple personalities and she had created multiple personalities to go along with his multiple personalities because, quote, he wanted his other personalities to have a girlfriend too.
So can we go over the personalities that Gypsy made for Nick's personalities?
Yeah, go for it.
So she came up with Kitty, who was like the dark vixen.
What's that?
Kitty was the dark vixen, so she was kind of like the naughty girl, the emo one, if you want to say that. And she also had pictures to match each one, so
oh, really?
He had a little collection of her personalities, I guess. Candy was the second one, and she was the slutty, naughty girl who was down for anything. And Ruby was the evil one. So they're all kind of similar.
They're all kind of bad girls.
They're all bad girls. Nick, he was really into BDSM. And for those who don't know what that is, it's a variety of erotic practices or role-playing involving bondage, discipline, dominance, and submission. Sadomaso... I can't say that. It's
sadomasochistic.
Yeah. Oh, you can say
basically violent sex.
Yeah, really, really hardcore. He was also on the autistic spectrum, and he had Asperger's too.
Yeah, and he had an IQ of 82. There was this time that he was arrested in the past because he had been at a McDonald's, and he was apparently watching porn for 9 hours and masturbating, so...
Didn't they find a knife, too, when they arrested him?
Oh, yeah, he had didn't they say it was a really long knife? Like, not your normal knife that you would be carrying on your body?
He claimed he heard voices, and he was on medication, but I think the voices told him to stop taking the medication, so he did.
Oh, yeah, schizophrenia, huh? So, this guy had issues, and clearly it was a bad combination with Gypsy's helpless and sheltered condition.
But to her, he was the knight in shining armor.
Yeah, exactly. Which is how this led to a murder. So this is clearly a premeditated murder, and like I just said, a terrible combination of people that were... One was under extreme emotional stress, and then there was someone who was actually suffering from mental ailments and easily swayed to do anything to protect the girl he loved. So,
his mom said that because of all of his mental disabilities and his autism, that he was always focusing in on one thing at a time. He had a real one-track mind. So when he told Gypsy that he loved her, he really meant it. And when he told her that he was going to protect her from anything, he really meant it.
Yeah. So
Gypsy had mentioned once he told her that he was going to protect her from anything, she said, "Do you mean my mom too?" And that's what kind of got the ball rolling for the whole plan to kill Didi.
Oh, that's right.
They called it the Plan B. And they said they had a lot of other options they were going to look into, but Plan B was always in the back of their minds.
And Gypsy hadn't even told him for a long time in their relationship that she was a captive, basically, of her mother and all of the supposed medical conditions she had. He had no idea because she's a normal girl just talking to him on the internet.
Right. She said it took about a year into the relationship, and then that's when she told him everything that was going on.
Yeah.
And then after one of their fights, she told him that she was ready to go through with Plan B, and that's what happened.
Oh my goodness. So, just another case where extreme abuse. I mean, this mother was a piece of trash, if you ask me. And I mean, personally, which I know a lot of people will disagree because it's not just, but I don't care that she got murdered. I mean, what else could Gypsy have done in her little sheltered world to get out of this situation? Don't quote me on that.
To this day, Nick is still in prison. He says that he still loves Gypsy, although Gypsy doesn't feel the same towards him. He pleaded not guilty, and he's going to have his trial this fall. But Gypsy, her excuse was saying, there's a huge difference between asking someone to kill for them and actually killing. So, I guess there's a difference, but there's still quite a...
Yeah, like you said, she was raised with a language of manipulation, and, you know, she probably still doesn't quite understand remorse, but when you spend your entire first 23 years of your life living under Didi, who is the queen of manipulation and just horribleness, it kind of makes sense that Gypsy really doesn't understand remorse. And I mean,
right.
She's just thrilled to be free.
The journalist that assessed her interview said that she doesn't have a language anymore except for manipulation and retaliation, which I think really fits because of what she learned from her mother, which she was bound to learn because that was the only person that she had in her life.
Yeah. So don't be abusive to your kids or they'll kill you.
Let's talk about Munchausen by proxy.
Oh, yeah. Go for it.
Munchausen by proxy is when a caregiver fabricates or induces an illness on a child to get Munchausen by proxy is when a caregiver fabricates or induces an illness on a child to get attention. This is very much considered abuse of a child, and it's usually for emotional gain more than it is for material gain. Gypsy says that Didi did all this because Didi needed attention that she couldn't get anywhere else. She didn't feel loved, so she made Gypsy sick, and she was so sick that Gypsy would only... I'm going to re-say that. Gypsy says that Didi did all of this because she, meaning Didi, needed the attention.
What the...
Should I redo it now?
Yeah.
Gypsy says that Didi did all this because Didi needed the attention. She didn't feel loved like she thought she should be, so she made Gypsy as sick as she could so that Gypsy would forever need her and love her. Man, that's crazy. Munchausen by proxy is a very real thing, and it happens more than we think it does. But because it's not technically a neglect, it's over medicating, and well, it is neglect, but not in the right way that makes it neglect, I guess.
Did you talk about the difference between Munchausen disorder and Munchausen disorder by proxy?
Mm-mm.
Okay, because like Munchausen is like when you project your own illnesses onto other people, like you convince them that you have all these illnesses to get pity from them. And by proxy, like the name, is where you project that onto someone else and pretend that they have all these illnesses to get pity for yourself. So that's the by proxy part of it.
Just a few other things to go over. Gypsy claims that she killed her mom. Gypsy claims that she killed her mom not because she hated her, but because she needed to escape her. What else do I have?
Yeah, her only way out.
Right. After the murder, Gypsy and Nick, they ran to a hotel. Gypsy has video footage that you can find on YouTube or the documentaries. And they're laughing. They're in bed together. They're eating brownies together. And this was just
hours. You can see
hours.
Nick's butt.
You can see his butt. It's just hours after the murder. It's just hours after Gypsy heard her mother yelling for her and Nick stabbing her to death. Very strange.
And they were talking all goofy and cute, and she was like, I can't remember what she said, but they were in a really good mood.
I think Gypsy explained it as being on a high because she was finally free. But man, that's just a really
it was the first
weird reaction.
Yeah, first time in her life that she could be herself. So who can blame her? You know, you wait 23 years. That's your entire life to be who you really are after your mom keeps forcing you to pretend to be this pathetic, sick, dying girl. I mean, how did she even make it 23 years through that, you know?
Mm-hmm. And how did only 1 out of 150 doctors that treated her call CPS?
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, let's talk about the case we covered last week. Mary Bell was only 11 when she committed those murders. And, I mean, the effects of her abuse kicked in much sooner than this case. So waiting 23 years to do some kind of violent outburst act like this, yeah, I'd say it was about time that she was able to be herself, you know.
And none of Didi's family really seems to care, so...
Yeah, they're all like, she got what she deserved.
Yep.
And that's a direct quote. Yeah. So
that's pretty much it for this case.
So hopefully you enjoyed the way we laid it out. For people who haven't heard of this case before, we kind of wanted to present Didi as this sweet mother at first, and like the victim. And
did we fool you?
So if you haven't heard of this case before, definitely go watch that documentary, Mommy, Dead, and Dearest. It's so interesting. And also listen to the Generation Wise podcast about it. Insight covered it. Kim Knows Nothing covered it.
2020 covered it.
Yeah. Well, I don't care about them. They got enough watchers.
I think they're really good, so.
Yeah, 2020 covered it. They're really good. But yeah, every podcast I listened to had a different take on it, and they were all really interesting. And the documentary definitely had things that were unique to it that, I mean, obviously no one thing can cover every single little detail because it's such a complicated mess of a case. I mean, it covers 23 years. So, yeah. If you enjoy the show, definitely subscribe on whatever podcast app you're using. And please give us a rating. Let us know if you enjoy it. Preferably a 5-star rating to help out the show. And let us know what cases you want us to cover. You can email us at vovpodcast@gmail.com with case suggestions. We primarily cover cases that involve a crime that has to do with some form of abuse. So feel free to email us, or even with your own story if you want us to just hear it, or if you want us to cover it, or if you want us to interview you. Let us know. So, if you really like our show, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/VOVpodcast. And do you have anything else to say, Rosie?
Nope.
Cool. Well, thanks again for taking the time to listen to this, and
thank you.
And we'll talk to you next time.